Hey again. So I'm going to address some misconceptions, spiritual misconceptions perhaps, that I've noticed in myself. There's this idea that there are different types of beings that there are very wise beings and there are beings who are not so wise and they're distracted or ignorant or whatever terms you want to use. And I find that there's kind of a subtle, unspoken discrimination, perhaps, from people who believe themselves to be a certain type of special being towards whatever people they believe are not that special of a being or that sort of thing. But this is all wrong. There are, in fact, no different types of beings. There are absolutely different personalities and different ways that being expresses itself. But there are no different beings. There truly is, at the most fundamental level, no me and no you. These are just words that we use to extrapolate and to talk in conversation and function as a society. But at the end of the day, these words kind of reinforce a sense of separation unconsciously. Because there is no two beings. Everyone is the one being. Everyone can access this understanding simply and directly by the felt sense that I am. But this understanding that I am is not personal and individual to each person. It's the same understanding, the same exact sense that I am. And this sense that I am, which truly is not even a sense, it is before the senses, is the experience of what we call peace and happiness. But it is not even an experience, it is yourself. So to what I was saying, that there are not two beings, this is true. And there are no hierarchy of beings. There is not such a thing as a holy being and an unholy being. This is why all the great sages and mystics and what have you have always said that you should love everyone. And from the perspective of being a person, this doesn't make any sense. Everyone? Really? Everyone? Even the people who I don't like? Really? But that response comes from the perspective of being a separate being and not from being. It's a lot of beings, I know. try to make the language as accessible as possible. But basically, there's no such thing as two separate beings. There's only one being. But to say that there is one being implies other numbers of beings. So that's why I say there is not two beings, because it is true. Yourself, the presence hearing these words right now, and the man on the street are of the same being. You have different personalities, probably. You have different families, you have different interests, different experiences which you've had. But you are of the same being. And this is where the word love gets its meaning from. It is not a romantic, lovey-dovey, Cupid with the arrow kind of thing. Love, at least in the way that I use the word, is the shared recognition that my sense of I and me and the sense of you, the one hearing my words, are the same being. Despite the differences in our appearance and our background and all that sort of thing. And this can be a difficult understanding to swallow. There's a phrase that I heard recently that says, "The truth will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off." And I love that one. Because it's kind of true. But don't let it piss you off too much, because it only gets better from here. Life only gets sweeter and more enjoyable. So you may wonder, what about all the people who I don't like? And I think I'm a good person and I think they're bad people. This is still not a useful way to think about this, to conceptualize your life. Because these people are not separate people. They are you. And that can be very hard to accept. But if you truly wish to live in a world with more good people and less bad people, if you have to put it like that, the more that you treat them as bad people in your experience, and the more that you create those layers of separation, the more that will be reinforced. The more that they will continue to act as bad people, and you will continue to act as a good person, and the more everyone will suffer. So, until you can live from the understanding that we are not two, the more the world will suffer. And I'm not saying that you have to like these people. But just recognize that they're not a separate being than yourself. I didn't say it was always easy. This is where the idea of forgiveness and compassion comes from. Not from an ideal, a moral ideal. Because if you're acting as a person who wants to be good and compassionate, you're still going to suffer. And the people who you're being good and compassionate towards are still going to suffer. Because you're still treating each other as different people instead of yourself. So that's why there's the phrase that you have to fill your own cup first. It is the opposite of selfishness. It is the understanding that if you live as the presence I am, you will heal and help the world far more than you ever could have hoped to if you were doing it from the perspective of being a person, a separate person. And this is where the kind of tricky gray area of the game comes in, where you have to understand how to set compassionate boundaries. You don't have to go all the way to one end of imaginary spectrum of sacrificing your own self and your own life to try to teach or help people think that you're saving them in any way. Because it doesn't work that way. The more time that you live from your own being, the more actual benefit that the world tastes, if that makes sense. More so than any other action or story that you could tell yourself. That's why Ramana Maharshi said, the greatest service you can render the world is for you to know yourself, or something along those lines. I would suggest that the greatest service you can render yourself is to know yourself. And those two sentences were identical. The one that Ramana Maharshi said and the one that I said. Identical in meaning. And once you know yourself, you will fully understand why. I love you.